Hey guys, it's Chad. Welcome back to the Dorky and 40 channel. And today I want to talk about my first few days of Flight 1. So I picked up Flight 1 Revolt OSD and Bolt 32 ESC combo package and have installed that into my TBS Source 1. And if we take a look at it here, start with kind of the important stuff with Flight 1. I want to talk about what's changed since I've last used Flight 1, what's still the same, and just, they pride themselves on how easy it is to get in the air and how great it flies and everything else. And I just kind of want to put all of that to the test because we do see some amazing videos, and I don't want to just use Betaflight if there is other options out there that might be, they might have something else to offer. So I'm definitely trying to keep it real and keep it honest here as far as what things are going on. And, after I spend some more time with this, I'll definitely be giving you guys, a more real opinion on how I feel about Flight 1 now and the firmware and everything else. They've made some great strides since I have used them before, when there was very little CROSSFIRE support, no OSD, no way to change your PIDs and stuff like that, except for Lewis scripts, which barely worked and were slow and everything else. So they've made a ton of progress, and I feel like some of that progress has probably been held back because they've kind of had to go their own in different directions, and there was the whole Helio mess and stuff like that. But I'm very happy that they seem to be back out there, and they seem to be working a little bit more with the Betaflight people, which in the end is only going to benefit all of us, and I think that's a really great thing. Even though Flight 1 is closed source, and they're even going further towards closed source, even if one or the other can inspire ideas to the other, we all benefit. And I think that they are definitely both heavily influenced by each other. Inside the Source 1 here, you can see the Bolt 32 on the bottom and the Flight 1 Revolt OSD on top. Now, building Flight 1 quads is definitely a really important thing. You got to have everything just kind of mounted their way. You get like capacitors and a foil shield for your ESC and, all kinds of stuff like that. So Preston made a video that shows how to install their boards properly, and I pretty much followed the instructions. I have an O-ring here underneath my bolt, then I have my bolt, 2 O-rings, and then the actual revolt, and the revolt is inverted. I'm using the plugs, which is kind of another annoying thing we'll go over, because some of the plugs where you would plug in, like, say, all of your outputs for your CROSSFIRE or your UNIFY or whatever, don't necessarily work. You kind of have to do some hacks and stuff, and that's kind of something that Flight 1 has always had, is that you kind of have to hack things around a little bit to get things working properly. So the good thing on a 6S build like this is that even Preston said that I won't need any capacitors, because we're not like pulling the super amps and stuff like we would be on a high KV 4S or 5S setup. So it does make for a little bit of a cleaner build. Got the UNIFY new race VTX back there and CROSSFIRE. So right out of the gate, some things that people complain about. Don't have any video noise issues at all. The video is like really super clean, running right off of the Revolt, so that's pretty good. And flight performance wise, I haven't noticed anything that would indicate that I have any kind of like weird yaw tip twitches, or like an overly electrified system that's just kind of driving that gyro kind of crazy. And using this mounting technique, even without like press nuts pressing down on everything, I don't have like super vibrating video and everything like that. Everything's pretty good. I don't have any really good flight footage to show yet, because I want to work some things out before I just throw something up and people are like, oh, that looks horrible or whatever. As I said earlier, Flight 1, yes, the configurator is great, but it's not like 100% perfect experience. So let's talk about some of the things that you kind of got to mess around with and hack around to just make it all work great. And the reason why I'm not putting up the video, because of the obvious reasons I said before, is just because I really haven't had a lot of time to play around with it. I've only flown like probably 10 or 11 packs. The weather's been pretty bad, and we had a huge medical record upgrade at our hospital this past weekend. So I've been in and out of weird shifts and working and, you know, doing that IS thing. So the first thing let's talk about is, let's talk about the pros and cons and things that you have to do. So you would think that when you buy both components from Flightone, which by the way, the Flightone components, when you put them in your hand, the quality of just how they feel and how they look and everything is just far superior to everybody else. And with them being like pretty price competitive, you definitely feel like you're getting your money's worth when it comes to buying the actual hardware. So there's no question or issues about that. So if you want, first thing, we'll just kind of work our way around. If you want your current to work from your Bolt 32 ESC into a Flightone board, it doesn't work just by plugging it in. You actually have a couple little pads here, and if you read through this, it gets kind of confusing. Preston did make a video on it though, and you know, it works just fine. What you have to do is you have to bridge the current TX and TX pads together, and then that will get current working properly out of your bolt. So that is step one. When it comes to CROSSFIRE in the connector goes with these 4 pins right here and plugs in. The problem is that this RX3 is not actually what you're going to be using to receive telemetry back from CROSSFIRE if you want it. If you want telemetry from CROSSFIRE, you're going to have to actually hook that up somewhere else. And I chose to go over here to the TX3 pad, which is typically used for smart audio. But I am actually using smart audio through my CROSSFIRE, which means that I cannot use Racefight Lewis scripts and stuff, which is fine because I don't use those anyway, but it's just something to keep in mind. So they do have an OSD now, which they never had a year ago when the last time I tried Flightone, and you can set that up and that works pretty good. So you do have to solder this pad right here and this one together so you can get a normal inversion signal, non-inverted signal to go to operate CROSSFIRE. And they also have another one down here if you want, I think this might be used for S-port. Not 100% sure because I did not have to use it. So I am using the regular camera connector up here, that's no problem, and I am using the VTX connector just without the smart audio. That's going directly to the CROSSFIRE micro. So when it comes to wiring everything up, that's pretty much about it. So let's actually take a look inside the configurator here. So everybody has seen what you have to do as far as getting stuff working and calibrated and all that stuff out of the box with Flightone. This is super simple. It works great. It's definitely one of the best parts about Flightone is this whole little process here. It would be nice if some of the other things were so easy that you didn't have to hack like I just showed you, but you know, whatever. The other thing is you do have to set up your modes here, and they have like a launch wizard, which you can just kind of toggle switches on and off. Good to see now that, you know, the OSD is toggled on and off by a switch. You don't use like stick commands to bring up the OSD. Let's see here. Koopa mode, turtle mode, or whatever. I'm running multi-shot because it's preferred right now. I guess they're running D-Shot and Falco, some pretty fast D-Shot protocols. So obviously that will improve. And they do have an updated firmware available on their website that I use to flash my bolt to some newer stuff, and I'll show you that here in a second. Of course, here in the configuration screen, you can enter in all of your stuff. Double arm, which is pretty cool. Copa style, you got a couple different options to choose from. Calibrated my voltage and set my low buzzer alarm. The current draw always acts really weird when it's just sitting on the bench, but when I plug in a battery, it works just fine. And then I have CROSSFIRE telemetry enabled on the TX3. Still gives you those annoying sensor loss things. I'm not sure where the breakdown in that is, if that's like a CROSSFIRE OpenTX thing or exactly what that is, but you do get those when you fly. So that's kind of annoying. Down here, this is pretty important because what they do in order for you to flash the Bolt 32 is they have a pass-through, and it's pretty cool because what you do is you click this button and it actually will install a version of CleanFlight onto your board, so then you can open up the BL Heli 32 configurator, set your ESCs, you know, your PWM frequency and stuff like that we like to do, and also upgrade the firmware. And then when you're done with that, then you can actually click another button and it'll reboot the flight controller and reinstall the firmware back on there. Sounds complicated, but it's really simple and easy, and it just works. Here we have our motor idle setting, and then of course we've got here where you can configure the OSD layout. The OSD is pretty cool. The fonts are pretty much the same, just in different sizes, so nothing fancy or anything like you might see in Betaflight. I have arranged mine differently than I typically have in Betaflight just because I can't find the right combination of like clarity and size that I like, but this is kind of what I am going off of right now. So another annoying thing about Flightone is, yes, their defaults work pretty good, but if you are kind of a more advanced, seasoned person, you probably are going to want to tune your filters a little bit better. You know, Flightone doesn't run like the automatic dynamic notch type of filtering. They've got a predictive filter. I played around with it for a couple flights. I, didn't like it, but I'm not going to say that it's horrible because, it's what Schizo uses, so obviously it's not. But it's really hard to get a log. Still working on it, and I think we have it figured out now from a person on Facebook, which was pretty nice. And that you have to basically run the flight controller in a certain mode, and you have to set the filters at a certain type in order to get a proper log. I would be flying right now, but again, the weather is keeping me from testing this out more. So when it comes to PID tuning and rates and everything like that, a lot of these presets are pretty good. I have been using the low power tune preset, which typically runs in what everybody talks about is their sim mode. The reason why I have legacy checked is that's what you have to use in order to get logs to look at. I've tried the whisper mode. Again, didn't have much luck, just haven't had the time to mess around with it. But as you click around on some of these custom tunes, it will change all this stuff and put that in, and then also it will also change your filtering as well. This is the filtering that I've put in right now to try to capture a black box log. So again, another little hack that you have to do. Even though most of you shouldn't have to do this, the regular filter presets should work, and a couple of them did work just fine on my quad, but I want to try to get all that stuff perfect because Flightone does have a really different feel when it comes to the sticks because it's just a little bit less latent because it does not have any filtering on the actual gyro chip itself. So if you can really tune these filters good and kind of get rid of one, or just make them as not aggressive as you can improve that stick feel even more. So you have your different rates that you can do. I've just been using the Flightone High Expo rates. The Betaflight rates converter, it doesn't feel the same to me, so I'm just going to play with this and get used to it. It's nice to be able to adjust your throttle curve like that right there, and individual TPA, which is going to be right here. And then they also have the CG adjustment, which is like your anti-gravity gain. So you can adjust that if you get nose bobs and all that kind of stuff, which as far as my flights go, I haven't had nose bobs when in forward flight, but I noticed that after a punch out, I've had my pitch dipping, and that's probably because the low power tune has a little bit lower pitch values than roll. But when I increase this pitch a little bit more than the stock, I start getting some weird oscillations, and it's probably because the filters are just kind of like weird and not right, or it could be a combination of the motors and props that I'm using, just because, you know, these Samgooks are nice, but they're not the, you know, the best, smoothest, most powerful magnets or anything in there. So they were just kind of like an economy thing. So components do have a big play when it comes to trying to get the perfect stuff that you can. So that's just kind of a walkthrough of what I've been going through the past 3 or 4 days, getting this quad up and built, kind of to like that expectation level that we have with Betaflight. You know, I hate comparing the two together because, you know, they both do great things, and, you know, they're very hardworking developers. They have dedicated people and teams, you know, team pilots and stuff like that. So I'm pretty excited to get this in the air and get it fully dialed in and see how things actually go. You know, right now I definitely will say that my other Source One, I'll put a link up here, I do it pretty much for every video, flies just amazing for the way that I like to fly, which is kind of just flowy and smooth. You know, most of you have seen the way that I like to fly. But with the Flight One, it's definitely a more accurate type of precise, locked in type of flying, especially with that sim mode. You know, people aren't lying about it. Are you going to be able to flash all this and get video like a lot of the people are posting out there? No way. I mean, it pretty much makes me think that a lot of people out there are busting the bubble and using that hyper smooth, because I just don't see it happening. Now, people like myself, and I've seen Raymond FPV and a few other guys that are just kind of normal people that don't take all the super time to do the edit and aren't running like Hero 7s and this and that. You know, I think that type of video is more indicative of the performance that you're actually going to get out of this, not Wild Willy or Schizo's videos. But it's very compelling and it's very interesting, and I'm excited to play with it and have some fun and see how things go. We know that Falco, I believe they said that they're pretty close to a public beta. I believe they have said that they are very close to a public beta release of Falco, but you know, on Raceflight's timetables, that could probably be 6 months is pretty close to what they say. And obviously, there's still some things that they still need to work through, even with their own stable versions that I just showed you guys here, and kind of how the architecture and how you have to wire things and set things up. And I don't want to be a Debbie Downer or nothing like that, but if I go through all this and it's not a very good experience, the best thing about the Revolt OSD and the Bolt 32 is that it's super amazing hardware, and I can just flash Betaflight on. Talk to you guys later.